Now by Mathew Hulbert, a Liberal Democrat in Leicestershire, who is the chair of the party's Friends of Youth Services group. Welcome, Mathew.
Thank you.
We have spoken to young people who voted Lib Dem in 2010 and who basically say they wouldn't vote again for your party because of your infamous U-turn on tuition fees. This is still your biggest problem, isn't it?
It is, and it wasn't our finest hour. I voted against the rise in conference, but democracy, it went the other way, and the party did that in coalition. All we can do now is try and say to young people, yes, that was a mistake, I admit it was a mistake, but the future now is all about Brexit, and many young people are against Brexit, and the Liberal Democrats are the only mainstream party that are fundamentally against Brexit, that say we accept the original result, but that set us off on a direction of travel. We don't know from the Prime Minister really any details in terms of this negotiation that she's going to do with the European leaders. And, you know, the older generations that predominantly voted for Brexit, I'm afraid, will be those that have to live with it for the shortest amount of time. Those that have to live with it are those young people, and so I would say to them, whatever mistakes my party may have made in the past, if you're against Brexit, your only option on June 8th is to vote for the Liberal Democrats.
Of course, Labour are now committing to abolish tuition fees, and if their draft manifesto is to be believed, so they're hoping to cash in on that. Mathew, Katie Atherton, who was in Tony's piece, went into politics and is now stepping down because of the abuse, she says, not just on social media, but she found the whole process of politics in Mansfield very gladiatorial. And she says that's putting people off.
Politics is a tough old game, isn't it? And I was a councillor for 4 years, and you know, when you're a politician, an elected representative, an MP or a councillor, you have to make decisions, and some people agree with those, and some people don't. And some people are very vociferous, indeed occasionally a tad rude in their opposition to what you do. To a certain extent, you have to take it on the chin, because that is kind of part of what you're going to get if you stand for election. But by the same token, I think social media, and, you know, I'm on Twitter, most of us are, you are, Marie, it's very easy to be angry about something and to go, and to type it in, and it's sent away. Instead, you should have a breath, have a thought, think, would I say that to the person to their face? If not, don't type it. Don't be nasty on social media.
OK, Jessica, maybe it isn't in the interests of the Conservatives to encourage young people to vote. I mean, after all, we do know that research shows that the younger you are, the more likely you are to vote Labour.
Well, that might be right, but I've always been consistent on this. I feel very committed about encouraging people to register to vote from the earliest possible opportunity, from the earliest possible age, and to make sure that people do take an interest and vote. See, I would say that the earlier that you take an interest, I would like to think that Conservative policies would appeal, and obviously that's the responsibility of Conservative candidates to do that. But be that as it may, I think this country, it's about the future. It is, you're voting for the next 5 years now.
And that's
so
why
anybody who's just becoming to voting age now, there's such an important 5 years coming up. And I don't just mean Brexit, although of course that in part, but domestic policies as well. This is their future. I really encourage people to register.
But you stood down, didn't you, after just one term? In a way, you walked away from a career in politics. You know, were you disillusioned? Will people see that, you know, as a...
I hope not, no. I mean, I think public service it's a brilliant thing to do. You know, it's a real privilege and it's a real pleasure. And I also don't think that anyone should be compelled to do it for whatever reason. It's about choice. And, you know, and I think that's a really important message as well. For me, it was about serving my community, doing the best I possibly could, also for my party and for my country for the time I was there. So I would say, make sure you vote, and if you want to, make sure you stand.
So how do we make this happen, Graham Allen? Because in 1992, 63% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted. In the last election, that had dropped to 43%. We all know how important this vote is. How are you going to bring it home?
Well, I'm standing down, of course, while I've still got some of my youth left to expend. But seriously, we need to make politics more user-friendly generally, above all for women, but also for young people. But that includes things like, for example, as you say, getting people involved. Let's be a bit tougher on this. Let's say if we can drop the voting age to 16, which I'm in favour of, that then it should be mandated you're going to go and vote, even if you go and spoil your ballot paper. Let's make sure, as something I've campaigned for a long time, we have online voting, so young people don't have to take a day off work or college, but they can vote from the comfort of their own
more attractive.
PC if they so wish. Let's also stop this idea that somehow young people are different to everyone else in the issues they care about, whether it's the environment and global warming, the state of our food, the state of global multinationals evading tax, and the idea that young people don't have a job to go to, that we actually just throw people out of school at the end of the day and hard luck, fend for yourself. These are issues that are of real concern to everyone, above all young people, and we need to respect that by making sure that we're also getting the mechanics right to allow them to enter our politics easily.
Not to patronise them, OK. Would you support mandatory voting?
I would support mandatory voting as long as there was an option of none of the above. I think you would have to have that for mandatory voting. But I think Graham is absolutely right that young people care about a range of issues. You say I'm chair of Lib Dem Friends of Youth Services. Youth services, so these are youth clubs, etc., run by councils, have been cut up and down the country by local by local councils. But when you say to the local councils, why have you felt you need to do this, they blame, I have to say to my Conservative friend here, they blame the budget from central government, and it's vulnerable young people especially that suffer when these services go. It's shameful.
There is some hope, of course. Almost 60,000 young people registered to vote.
Which is phenomenal, and there's still time, I believe, to continue to do so before this election. But I agree, it absolutely should be votes at 16. The fact that some young people in Scotland can vote in some elections but not in others, giving people the mandate, the franchise, and then taking it away from them, shameful again.
OK, thank you very much, Mathew Hulbert. Now, it's the most marginal constituency in England, just a few dozen...